Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. So today I want to talk about all of those kind of hidden costs that you have when you're moving into your very first home that you've bought. So a bit of context, I bought this flat here about 2 years ago in London, and I was able to buy it by myself. So there was a lot of bills I had to kind of, plan ahead for. So I just wanted to kind of rack through all those with you. If you're thinking of buying a property in the UK, hopefully this is helpful. So first of all, it should be pretty obvious. If you're buying an apartment or in a house or whatever, that's let's say 200 grand, you will have to have at least a 10% deposit. So in that 200 grand example, you would need to have 20 grand in your bank account. Now, obviously, the higher, price of the value of the property, the higher the amount of deposit that you have. So that is an important thing to have up front, I would say. I wouldn't go looking at apartments or putting in any offers before you have that deposit in your bank account. There are certain banks that allow you to have a lower deposit, but that just means that your monthly mortgage is going to be so much more. And also if the interest rates spike over time, you're going to be stuck with really big bills. So I would say definitely at least 10%. If you can do more, that would be great, because then the loan to value ratio will be different, and then you will be paying a slightly lower amount every month. So the bigger the deposit, the actual better, but obviously don't strain yourself too much. It's really important to have an emergency fund still left over if you're moving into a property. Don't spend all of your cash to move in and then have nothing left for bills or furniture or an emergency, especially if you're buying a property alone or as a couple, of course, or if you have children. It's really important not to spend all of your cash up front, to still have some emergency fund left over. I would always recommend to have 3 to 6 months of living expenses as an emergency fund. Now, if you're buying a house, of course, you might be scrimping and saving, and some of that money might get put in towards other costs, but at the very least, I would recommend to have at least 3 months of living expenses in an emergency fund still. So the second thing is obviously solicitor costs when you're buying a home. Now, when I bought this one, I actually linked up with my estate agent. They had offered that they have, a law service, a solicitor service as well. At first, I thought, hang on a little bit, are they going to be really expensive? So in my eyes, it was like, okay, I will get the deal done quicker because it's all kind of in-house, essentially. You're not waiting on different companies to reply to each other. And I definitely did get to purchase this house sooner than, the average, probably a month sooner. So that's kind of, a little bit of a win if your estate agent is good and you feel like their solicitors that are linked to them are good. I would say to go with them if they're not that much more expensive. So next up is stamp duty costs in the UK. Now, if you're buying a 200 grand house, this is how much stamp duty you would have to pay. However, if you're buying a £500,000 house or apartment, this is how much stamp duty you have to pay. So just be really aware of those costs, because again, you have to pay those before you complete on a property. Otherwise, it's not yours. So once you've actually moved into the property, you might have to pay for movers fees. Now, I was able to kind of do it by myself with taxis because I lived pretty close nearby renting before I bought this place. But if you have to, rent a man with a van, they can usually be about £100, at least £200, £300, depending how far away you are. Or you might want to do it yourself. But actually, sometimes it's easier to just get a man with a van. There's a really good website literally called Man with a Van, I think, that I'll pop down below. It's not affiliated or anything, but I have used them in the past. And sometimes you can pay as well for the driver to help you, or he can bring a helper as well to help with your boxes. So, maybe put some money aside if you don't want to do it alone. So once you've actually moved into the place, 9 times out of 10, it'll be a completely empty apartment and you will have to buy furniture. I'm talking sofas, I'm talking tables, I'm talking all of the bits and bobs like pots and pans and everything. Now, if you rented, you've probably got some of those bits already for the kitchen, but the bigger items like a bed and a sofa and things like that, you most likely won't have. So again, this is something that's really important too. When you're buying a property, make sure you have enough for a deposit in your bank account, enough for stamp duty in your bank account, an emergency fund, which is just for emergencies if that ever was to happen, and then also, some money for furniture. And that is a lot of money that you need to have up front. You might be really lucky that you're in a couple and you can split those costs, or you might have family members that might be able to loan or to help you as a gift, give you money or to give you furniture for free. But with furniture, you have to bear in mind that they can take a long time to arrive as well. So for example, with my sofa, I think it took about, let me have a think, 15 weeks, something like that, because a lot of the time they don't keep a lot of the sofas in warehouses. It's kind of like as you buy them, then they get the factories to make them, that kind of thing. So it can take 20 weeks. I've known people who have waited, nearly a year for, a specific kind of fancy sofa. So things like that. The sofa I have now is a lot cheaper, but when I first moved into the property, I had a sofa that was £1,000, and I'm still like, why did I spend that much money on a sofa? That was probably the biggest expense I've ever paid for like a single item. But it was a leather sofa. It was like you could fit 3 people on it, and I thought, oh, I can have this for years and years. However, when I, eventually rejigged the room and everything, it didn't quite suit or fit. So that was a bit of a waste. It's currently sitting in storage. So don't do stupid things like that. Really have a think. And don't be, snubbing on secondhand furniture. Places like Facebook Marketplace, eBay are very good, or even places like FreeCycle where you can get free furniture is really good as well, and it won't break the bank. But obviously be very conscious when you're getting things like sofas. Like I would never buy a secondhand mattress just because I'm really nervous of like bed bugs and things like that. So I would always say for like a mattress, of course, get that brand new. But yeah, for furniture, I would definitely set aside at least £3,000 for like, sofa, table, bed frame. I think with a bed as well, it's really important to invest in a, good quality bed for your back, and to have, a decent frame, but mainly the mattress needs to be good quality. I spent about, I think, £500 on my mattress, and I have no regrets. It's like the best mattress ever. But I do regret spending way too much money on the sofa that I eventually just never used. So white goods as well. So when you buy a property, sometimes all of the white goods is taken by the previous seller. So things like if there's a dishwasher, washing machine, fridge, oven, sometimes they take these away with them. Obviously you'll be notified of this when you're buying the property. They will give you all of the contents that are included in the sale of the property. So there won't be any surprises, hopefully. But if you know for a fact that there won't be a fridge and there won't be a washing machine, you will have to pay out of pocket for those. So for example, an oven can be like £500. So if you really, have no money to spend on these things, you can be a little bit stuck because you will need a fridge, like, let's be honest. Whereas things like, sofa, you can wait, a few weeks or a few months for those kind of things. But at things like, an oven to cook and a fridge to store your food, they're kind of important. So as well as the furniture, for white goods, some apartments, have them already, but if you're not going to have them, make sure you have money set aside to buy those. So I've done a video on service charge already. I'll pop it up here if you want to look at it. But if you have a leasehold property, whether it's an apartment or a house, you will have to pay service charge as well as ground rent. So just be really conscious of those, because service charge can be a couple hundred plus, a month. They can be quite expensive. Ground rent, depending on who your leaseholder is, can be as minimal as £50 for the year, all the way up to the hundreds. So just be aware of those, but you will be told by the solicitor of these costs before you move in. And the last point I want to make is, if you've bought a pretty old, doer-upper or even an old building, it's always really good when you do, the initial check with the estate agent before you buy the property, to check things like a boiler, to check if there's any damp, to check if, the floors are peeling up, things like that, because those are quite expensive. Like if you have to replace a boiler, I imagine if a boiler is over like 10 years old or 20 years old, definitely, you may have to replace it sometime soon, and boilers can cost thousands of pounds to replace, okay? So maybe have a bit of a look at that before you put an offer into, the property. Is how old is the boiler? When was the last checks, things like that, because when you move in, those are expensive things to replace. And same with damp work. If you're moving into an older property and you already see mold and you already see damp and things like that, before you buy the property, you will have a chance to do surveys, and then, the contractors in the surveys can tell you whether the damp is really bad and whether it needs a lot of work on it. And that can kind of be a bit of a negotiation technique as well when you're buying the properties. Maybe the seller can fund part of that damp work. I've had that in the past as well, and we were able to use it as a bit of leverage to get a bit of a discount, or that the seller can pay for that and have it done before you move in. So that's it, guys. Hopefully that was helpful. If you are about to buy a property, I wish you the best of luck. Or if you're just planning ahead and you're trying to save a deposit over the next few years, it's really important to know these things and kind of know what you're getting yourself into, but also not to be afraid of these, big numbers. You do have a lot of time, and it doesn't matter what age you are, okay? If you're in your early 20s or if you're in your 40s, and you're wanting to buy your first property, what I would say is if you put your mind to it, you can do it if you've got a decent job. A lot of the people that watch my videos, they tend to be working professionals in that age group. So you can set aside a few hundred here and there every month to put towards that goal. So I'd really recommend it if this is something that you want to do. I would say with leasehold properties, just be a little bit careful with service charges. As I said, I've done a video all on service charges and what that means for you. So if you can, I would say buy a freehold, but also leasehold is pretty cool. You know, it's nice to come home to your own home and not have to deal with landlords or anything like that, or housemates. So yeah, I would really recommend it if you're keen on doing it. Okay, that's all from me, guys. Thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.